Alright guys, we're back at the Sorcery for the base game. I'm going to go ahead and go through all 73 spells. And first is going to be Swift Glintstone Shard. And this is a wonderful spell. I give it S tier. You get it early. It's useful all throughout the game. You can even use it in game if you want, if you're in a FP crunch time. So it's definitely a great spell. It's insanely fast casting. It's just one of the best ones in the game. Alright, next we have his Glintstone Pebble. It has a really low FP cost. A 1 second cast time, which isn't that good. So, but it's very usable, you know, really cheap FP, great spell early game. I will give it A tier, maybe high B. Next we have Great Glintstone Shard, which is very useful. You basically just need more FP to use this, just does more damage. Does have some one-shot potential and some stronger monsters. I give this one again a B tier. Next, we have Glintstone Comet Shard. This is when they start to get better. They can actually go through and hit multiple monsters, which is nice. They also have capable one-shot power, which is nice. And then lastly, we have in this series is the Comet. Comet, I definitely give an A tier too. It definitely has one-shot power. They can both be charged up to do more damage. Like this Comet has very good one-shot power for an area like this. And like you said, it does pierce through, so you can hit multiple enemies for it. This is one of the better spells. You'll definitely use it a lot in the game. Great spell. That's Comet. Alright, next one is Shard Spiral. I'm going to go a little more into depth in this one because it's one of the better spells in the game, sorceries. You actually do this Sorceress Selling quest line. You unlock a lot of spells doing all over quest line, but Shard Spiral you get at the end, which is in... Alright, I just want to show you kind of the power of this spell. We're here in this area with these strong giants. It's really nice how you can actually cast a whole bunch of them before you even start fighting them. You can actually finish them off. Stagger them and finish them off before you even have a chance to hit you. That's why it's such a good spell. I definitely rate this as an S tier spell. That was a really sloppy kill. Let me see if I can do a better job here. That's why I rate this an S tier skill. Very, very good spell. As you can see, it tracks monsters down and changes directions too as well as hits it multiple times. Alright, up next is Glintstone Stars. Just pretty basic spell, kind of mid. Nothing special, doesn't really have any one-shot power. I give it like a C tier. Basically just preference if you want to use this spell or not. Alright, next is Star Shower. It's basically in between Greater Glintstone Shard and the Comet Shard. Tracks down monsters, but doesn't quite one-shot. Can be more useful if there's multiple targets that you're hitting. I give it a B tier. Can be usable in some situations if you want to use it. It's kind of heavy on the FP though. I'd say more like a B tier, high C tier. Alright, Glintstone Arc. This is a really great spell for very agile enemies. It only costs 9 FP, and this is actually one of your better AoEs that you get very early in the game. Monsters can try to dodge it, but you can still hit them with it because of the wide range. It's super useful. You see he tries to jump, but he still gets hit due to the wide range. I really like this spell. Definitely give this a high A tier, almost S tier. But yeah, we see him keep trying to jump out of the way, but they still get hit. Super useful area, or super useful sorcery for farming this area too. These guys get a ton of FP early on. Hey, see? Love it. Definitely A+ tier spell. Glintstone Art. Alright, next is Crystal Barrage. This spell I really don't like. If you guys know any secret sauce to this spell, leave it in the comments. I definitely give this like a D tier. Just has a really long cast time for very, very low damage. So definitely a very low D tier on this. I mean, you're stuck in place for almost a second and a half while you do very low damage. Alright, Crystal Burst, 14 FP. This skill is chargeable. It looks really neat. Really haven't found much of a use for it though. Good looking spell though. I definitely rate it like a C tier. Has kind of mid damage. Can be charged up. I just really haven't found like a very good use for it. But I give it a C tier. It's not completely useless. Okay, Cannon of Haima. However you say it, I think I said it right. Cannon of Haima. This is a pretty big nuker spell. It's chargeable too. It does have one-shot potential. So it's really good for, yeah, if you want to take out a big group of monsters, you know, from a range, and you don't want to deal with fighting them at all. But also, it does decent damage even when you don't charge it. Almost one-shot of them, so one of the more solid AoEs, I would say, for early to mid game. Definitely give this like a really high B, possibly A tier. Pretty solid. It has a really long cast time, but like I said, it don't really matter. It's such a huge area, and you can hit so much stuff with it. You don't really use this in combat much. Just kind of like your jump a pack of monster skill. So I like it. It's pretty decent. Say, yeah, probably a low A tier. It's pretty decent. So the cannon did have a 38 FP cost. I didn't mention that. Next is Gavel of Haima. This one has 22 FP. Attacks using Great Hammer. I absolutely love this spell. This spell is so awesome. I mean, I can only give it like a B or an A tier, but it's still super fun to use. Feels really good to just smash the shit out of a bunch of monsters with it. And it knocks them on the ground. It's really hard to rate this one because it's very situational. Like, I wish I could use it a lot more because I really like it. But it just seems like most monsters are too dangerous for me to be able to use this. Damage isn't quite high enough either. If it had one-shot potential, ooh, this would be a really, really good spell. It's definitely good at interrupting monsters and knocking them down or knocking them off walls. So it's basically kind of like your preference to this spell. If you really like it and you want to use it a lot, it can get the job done. Rock Blaster. Thrust your staff on the ground amid a massive shockwave. 22 FP. This one is kind of mid too. I really haven't found a good use for it. Damage kind of mid. Really long cast speed. Basically a much weaker version of the Gavel. Way slower. I'm gonna give this a D tier. I really haven't had to find a use at all in this game for this spell at all on anything. I just really don't find it useful for anything. Definitely looks cool though. AoE's just way too small. Okay, so I'm going to take that back. I really can't give this a rating because I just figured out something new about this. When you're charging up with it, you can actually stab stuff with it, which is interesting. So, you know, I really haven't used this enough to actually rate it. It could actually be a pretty decent spell. I don't know. And there's also staffs that actually boost the digger sorcery, so I'm not sure. You definitely need some really high poise to be able to like poke stuff with this too. Now to think of it, I've actually been killed by a digger before when he was trying to poke me with his shovel thingy. So this is kind of interesting. I actually learned something new today. That's nice. Not only is it good looking, it does have a little stabby thing with it as well. So I still though, I can't rate it. I don't know what to rate it. It's really, I would think it'd be very situational, so I wouldn't know what kind of rating to give Rock Blaster. Alright, Scholar's Armament. So basically, you just make a non-magic weapon in your right hand. Magic just adds magic damage to it. I've never played like a Spellblade build, but basically that's what it does. Can't really give it a rating because I don't know the full effectiveness. I've seen there's been some good guides on these kind of builds. I just don't know a lot about them. Yeah, and you get this early on, so that's Scholar's Armament for you. Alright, Scholar Shield, same thing. You just increase the damage negation of your shield by using a magic spell on it. Can't really rate this either, because, yeah, no Spellblade. Alright, Starlight. I gotta give this an S tier, because it makes this absolutely stunning, beautiful game more visible. Like, look at this beauty. They did such a great job in this game, but yeah, I definitely give Starlight an S tier. Even though it costs mana and doesn't last very long, but, you know, I've always used a lamp instead, but, yeah, Starlight's awesome. Alright, Terra Magica. This is a really good spell. If you can find a situation where you can cast it, you just have to stand on it and it buffs the damage of all the spells you cast inside of it. Super great thing for bosses if you're using summons. It's, yeah, very great. Definitely give this an S tier. Alright, Thop's Barrier. Use this to deflect spells. I really can't give this a rating because I haven't perfected it, but it can be really difficult to learn how to use, but it seems to be more of like a PvE thing. I'm sure you could use it in PvE as well. Just feel like it's so much easier just to dodge roll and just dodge roll, yeah, and just cast offensive magic instead. But I definitely can see this being a really good spell for PvP. But yeah, I'm just going to give it an NA rating for now. Can't really give it a rating. Alright, Comet Azure. I would probably consider this to be the most powerful, most FP draining spell in the game. Possibly for a single cast. 40 FP, but it'll drain your whole FP bar if you hold it down. And it does insane amounts of damage. Basically the Goku beam, as you see in the intro. Wonderful spell. Definitely give this an S tier. I mean, it's not something you would farm normal monsters with, but extremely good for killing bosses with it if your summons or your spirit ashes are tanking for you. Yeah, gotta love it. It's sick looking, man. This is the best looking spell in the game too, probably. I don't know about the best looking, but pretty much near it. It looks really good. So you see, you limit the ability to change where you fire. Once it fires, that's where it's at for the whole cast. You have to go through the recast. And it has quite a long cast time. But devastating even when they are blocking, which is nice. And that is Comet Azure. Alright, Stars of Rune. This is pretty much your step up from Comet, but only single target. 32 FP. Comet costs 24. This can't go through the targets, but it can hit multiple targets. Like if you have two smaller guys running in front of you, it can hit multiple at a time. But this also has one-shot power. Not even charging up. Pretty much very situational, but it's a really solid spell because it does a lot of damage. Definitely give this an A tier rating. Very good looking spell too. Bounding Ring of Stars. 27 FP, which is pretty low. Requires 2 slots, but this spell's beautiful. I give it that. It definitely looks great. I just, has a pretty long delay. I can't really find a good use for it. I mean, it does do damage, and it does it with style, but I gotta give this like a D tier. There's just so many better AoEs. And if you know a really good use for this, leave it in the comments. I haven't found it yet. I mean, you might be able to hit really big targets with it a lot more, but the Spiral Glintstone spell can do the same thing, so definitely worth getting and messing around though, because it just looks pretty. Yeah, I definitely give Founding Rain of Stars a B tier. Magic Glint Blade. This is an early game spell which I find fairly useful. It can be really good for kiting monsters with. It's not insane damage, but it does do decent damage, and it has pretty good range. I find it really useful for, yeah, just kiting some really dangerous monsters with, and you don't want to sit there and, you know, it can hit them in the back. Pretty useful. So I gotta give this like a high A, or no, high B, low A tier rating. Just a decent situational spell that can be useful in certain situations. Alright, next we have the 3 Phalanx skills: Glint Blade, Carrion, and Great Blade. I'll go ahead and give these 2 a B tier. They're all useful, but this one is much better, Great Blade Phalanx, because it staggers much more than the other 2. It does really good damage. I'll give the Great Blade one more, I'd say closer to an S tier than an A, and these 2 like a high B, low A. They all do the same thing, they just Great Blade's just much more powerful. They're great for interrupting monsters. Anything that's invisible can hit them. Go near a wall, it'll hit monsters. As you can notice, the big difference. Great Blade stops stuff in its tracks. Staggers them way better. Also another really great thing for PvP as well. So yeah, definitely give this like an S tier for a lot of situations. It's wonderful. Crazy how well it can stagger stuff too with the Great Blade. Alright, Magic Downpour. Another pretty looking spell. FP cost isn't too bad on it. It's not very good for smaller targets, but it can be useful for bigger targets. Definitely does more damage on bigger guys. That's one thing I like about it. Just takes, you know, the bigger hitbox for it to hit a lot more. I wouldn't say it's a must-use spell, but it can be fun to use. Yeah, I give this a B tier. Okay, we got Loretta's Great Bow and Loretta's Mastery. Basically the same spell. One just shoots 4 arrows and one shoots 1 arrow. But the best thing about these, you know, 24 and 39 FP, they cost quite a bit. These spells have the longest range in the game, which is great. Big downside to them, though, is they take forever to cast. But I would call them like a very situational S tier spell. But all around purpose, I give it like a B tier due to the really long cast speed. They're both fun to use, and they're both fun to mess around with every once in a while too. Just like, you know, you feel like trying to snipe some stuff. But yeah, when you're in combat, pretty much out of luck. Oh, they do also have an explosion when they hit. So if they don't reach a target, or they got to hit near it and it explodes and will still hit them. Yep. Loretta's Mastery and Great Bow are the farthest reaching skills in the game. Most of the other spells in the game pretty much have a similar range to where they can't even hit the bird from here. So that's just to show you how far that you can actually hit with the Loretta's Mastery and Great Bow. Alright, we're back again. Next up we have Renala's Full Moon and Rainy's Dark Moon. Basically the same spell, but one is cold damage and one is magic. They have a lot of FP cost. Renala's is 57. Rainy's is 69. They got higher requirements too, and they also take 2 slots. But I mean, as for an AoE, they're really nothing special. And they do have one-shot potential. They have a really long cast time. The AoE's not that big, but it's big enough to kill stuff. It pretty much boils down to preference. But in comparison to other skills, I gotta give these like a C rating. Maybe a low B, high C. Really nothing special. There's very situational bosses that are weak to cold damage, and the Dark Moon might be your answer for some extra cold damage to inflict frostbite. But yeah, the long cast time just makes it pretty much bad for most boss fights, and the amount of FP it costs for how little damage it does. But there we go, my friends. That's Renala's and Ronnie's Full Moon. Alright, up next we have Carrion Slicer. This is one of the best spells in the game. Absolutely absurd. Costs literally no FP. It's so fast and it does so much damage. It's an extremely popular spell. It's been used for no-hit runs and all kinds of stuff. You can make a build 100% around this and just completely annihilate the game. It's honestly cheesy how OP this is. But yeah, this is Carrion Slicer. As you see, the damage, I mean, you can hit almost 4 times in a second. You know, it's just unreal. About 4,000 DPS or so with no buffs. Just nuts. Alrighty, that's Carrion Slicer, and this is definitely a double S tier plus spell. Alright, next up we have is Carrion Greatsword. You can get this one fairly early. It has pretty low FP cost and does pretty good damage. I'm definitely going to rate this higher than what it actually is just because I love it. I have a soft spot for it. Basically, if you accidentally kill the dragon up here early, you know, if you don't know the touch the site of grace respawn trick, you'll need one of these areas to farm FP early on, and this skill's super good on the mount. Like, you can just come up here and kill these things as they're coming out of the ground. Has really good range. You can like trying to hit stuff from far away where they can't even hit you. So I have a really soft spot for this. I definitely want to give this skill an A tier. I mean, in the general sense of things, it may not be that good, but I really like it. It's always been one of my favorite spells early on. That's right, I got payback. Yeah, I like that. I like how you can turn away and still get a hit off with it. Alright, up next we got Carrion Piercer. Just want to say too, man, I love this game so much. Elden Ring is such a masterpiece. Like, I don't know what's going on with gaming these days, but I wish every other game out there was just half as good as this game. This is just such a beautiful, wonderful game. But Carrion Piercer here, this one is kind of like your heavy duty stabber one where you can kind of stagger guys a little bit, keep them locked down a little bit. Has a higher FP cost and slower cast speed, but like these guys, these tubby guys are really good for testing out like stagger stuff. If you can stagger them, you're in good shape. They're really strong. See, it's not quite good enough for these guys, but definitely got a higher stagger chance. I would give it like a high B, low A tier rating, and that's Carrion Piercing. Alright, up next we have a Duelist Moonblade, 27 FP, sweeping slash followed by a cold blade projectile. It's definitely a useful one for anything that's weak to cold damage. However, the damage is kind of mid, but I mean, this spell's like one of the sexiest ones in the game. I absolutely love it. It looks so good. It's so fun to use. I mean, and it will kill stuff. Like, I mean, definitely can use somewhat for an AoE clear on weaker monsters. One of my favorite spells. But I definitely give it an A tier. Basically just like your great sword, but ice coming off of it. It's a little less damage, but still, it's solid. Alright, next is Lucidity. All this does is just debuff you. I'm not even going to rate it. It basically just reduces madness. That's Lucidity. Almost said it wrong. Alright, Carrion Retaliation. This is another reflex spell that can do damage back. Let's go, buddy. Give it to me. That's all you got? It's alright. I give it a B tier. PvP, yeah, depends if you want to use this one or the other one. Okay. And the last three spells for this part of the video. First one we have is Ambush Shard. These are kind of like good for dealing with like stealthy guys. This one will spawn a little shooty pebble behind the guy and stab it. These, I give this one a B tier. I give these two A tier, situationally an S tier skill for any kind of agile monster. These are so good. The Night Shard and Night Comet. Let's go ahead and put them to work. The Ambush Shard's kind of nice, but it seems like it's only good for an opener. And I mean, you could just basically stack up spells with so many openers now, so it's just like, it's okay. It misses a lot. But it's definitely somewhat useful. See if it's too far away, it just flops it out in the middle of the air. Yep, and this is the Ambush Shard. So I give this like a B tier. It's not too bad. Stuff's chasing you too. It can still manage to hit them in the back if they're going in a straight line. But these two, these are extremely important for any kind of like, you know, stealthy, like the lions, the tigers, the wolves, anything that's really dodgy, stealthy. These Night Shard, Night Comet's super useful because they can't see it coming and they can't dodge it. So these are like all around A tier, but like, you know, situational S tier. They're great. And then Night Comet, you can actually charge it up and do a lot more damage. Yeah. And these guys are super agile. They'll dodge everything, so it's super useful farming these guys with it as well. So that's Night Comet, Night Shard, and Ambush Shard. Alright guys, thanks for watching this part of the video.